Good afternoon. Hope you guys are all having a great day, no matter where you are in the world today. Thanks for tuning in. We got a special treat for you today. I'm Becky Hall, Director of Education down at the Nevada Science Center in Henderson, Nevada. And I'm here with Ranger Dawn, who takes care of her park here at Cathedral Gorge State Park in Nevada. And then Dr. Josh Bondi, who's our Director of Research at the Nevada Science Center also. So I'll give it to them, and I hope you enjoy.
Hi, welcome today. My name is Dawn, and I'm the park interpreter for all of Eastern Nevada State Parks. There are 10 of them, but you are at Cathedral Gorge today, and we are actually going to see a little video. Josh, you want to talk a little bit, and then we'll roll the video?
Thank you, Dawn. So again, thank you all for participating today, wherever you're at in the world again. Cathedral Gorge is a really special place here in Eastern Nevada. Has a really interesting geology, and in that geology is a really interesting history of life here about 5 million to 3 million years ago in the state of Nevada. So with that.
So we're going to see a little video on Cathedral. It will give you a little idea what's going on, and then we'll come back.
This geologic preserve features a dramatic landscape that intrigues the senses. Surrounded by spires that look as though they're reaching up to the sky, this park is a majestic display of dramatically carved cliffs and canyons. A testament to the power of water and erosion over hundreds of thousands of years. This is one of Nevada's original state parks, and visitors have been coming here to explore and enjoy these beautiful surroundings for the past century. Welcome to Cathedral Gorge State Park.
The gorge you see behind me was once a freshwater lake. Over millions of years, volcanic activity in the area laid volcanic ash called welded tuff throughout this whole region. That volcanic ash was ultimately carried into this lake through rivers and streams. And as that welded tuff eroded, it left all this depositional material, and now we have all of these beautiful slot canyons and formations that you can enjoy now that the lake has actually drained away.
Visitors from around the world come here to hike the park's trails and take in the dramatic vistas. Open 365 days a year, there is an adventure here for everyone. Some of the original facilities built by the Civilian Conservation Corps in the 1930s are still standing. There is so much to explore and experience at Cathedral Gorge State Park. From photography and nature study to biking and hiking. This is an unforgettable experience for the entire family.
Cathedral Gorge is an ever-changing landscape. These canyons and spires that you see throughout the park have been formed over thousands and thousands of years of erosion. The wind and the water works on this siltstone to create all of these great structures. And the reason it does that is because this siltstone is so fine that it turns into this fine powder like talcum powder, and it just blows away. So on different visits to the park, you may see a very different landscape. One of the things that makes Cathedral Gorge so unique are these slot canyons. Where I'm standing was once the bottom of a lake bed, and these magnificent walls that you see today are actually sediments that were at the bottom of that lake. And as the lake drained away and left the sediments open to erosion, water would run through the softer sediments and push them out onto the valley floor, forming these slot canyons.
Visitors can explore deep into the slot canyons, following their adventurous spirit as far as they wish. The walls are so close in places, they nearly block out the sky entirely. The canyons are narrow, and some even lead to hidden chambers. During the summer months, the canyons provide shade from the sun and much cooler temperatures. And after a day of adventuring, the comfortable campground is a great place to recharge for the next day ahead. Come visit and experience Cathedral Gorge State Park.
Well, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the video. And it told you a little bit about how all of our formations were actually formed. And one of the things that they talked about was how fine, or I talked about in the video, was how fine the siltstone actually is. And you probably can't see this very well, but you can see how fine that dust is. And that just blows away and forms more and more of the valley floor. So we have sand everywhere that you can enjoy. But the interesting thing is, how are those formations actually formed? Because we talk about how fine the sand is, but what happens is also there's a layer of what's called limestone. And this is much harder than that very fine siltstone that you see. Now, this actually sits on top of that compressed siltstone, and it compresses it even more. So as there was a lake, and this was brought into the lake and deposited, all that was compressed, and then this layer of siltstone is from when the water would actually evaporate away, and this was precipitated out. And this limestone is so hard that it forms a cap right on top of all that other siltstone. And then as it rains, or as we get snow, and we get quite a lot of snow here, the formations themselves don't just erode from the outside in, but from the inside out. But this protects that layer that's beneath it. And then all of that precipitation can come down around this layer of limestone. And as it erodes from the outside or the inside, then it forms all of those really cool spires that you see. Now, as the erosion takes place, you see things that will erode out of the hillside. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those things that come out of the hillside is not just some trash that you might see, but actually bones. And Josh mentioned something about the history and the prehistory of the area. One of the things that erodes out of our hillside is this. And some of you might know what this is. Some of you might not. Some of you might think it's a cow, which a lot of people do. And they actually did when they started eroded out of the hillside many, many years ago, many decades ago. They thought they were cows from the local farms. But actually, this is a baby bison. So bison used to roam this area back about 400 to 800 years ago. And if you can see right over here, this is a baby, but this one is a mama. So mamas and babies would roam around here, because what happens is the fathers, the males, leave the herd after they have mated, and then the mamas stay with the babies. Well, they figured that what happened, like I said, anywhere from 400 to 800 to 1,000 years ago, is the mamas and the babies, when it would rain, they would go back into the slot canyons that you saw in the video, and they would hide from the rain. The unfortunate thing was that all that rain and all that snow that would happen would cause mudslides. And since it is so fine, the mudslides would cause them to be trapped into those slot canyons. And once they were very well preserved. And you can see this actually is a pretty good specimen. This one eroded out of the hillside back in the 1970s and was found by a young man who was then camping here at that time. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending, he took it home with him, which you're never supposed to do. You can't take antiquities or bones or rocks or anything out of a state park. But this young man at the time didn't know it. And it was back in the early 70s when there weren't a lot of people making sure that those things didn't happen. So he took it home with him to California, had it for quite a while. And in the 1990s, when he grew up, he wanted to find out what it was, because of course he thought it was probably a cow. Come to find out that no, it's not a cow, it's a bison. And when he took it in to be looked at, they really wanted to know, well, where did you get this thing? So we ended up with it back. But as I said, the fortunate thing was not only that we ended up with it back, but we had Desert Research Institute out of Las Vegas come up and do a study to find out, was this just a one-off or are there more bison out there? Because if you look at a map that shows you where the bison roamed, Nevada's not on that map. So they really have to start redefining that. Anyway, so when Desert Research Institute came out here and they did a really cool dig, they looked, and that's how we know how old these are, because what they did was they dug down through the layers of the sediment and they found all these different bison bones throughout the years, and they could date them because of the flood that happened and the fact that they were preserved right there quickly because of the mudslide. So much was preserved. They even had hide on them and they had stomach contents. And that was so key to not just dating how old they were, and they found them anywhere from 400 to about 850 years. And this is 850 years old. They also were able to identify their stomach contents that told us literally what they were eating 850 years ago.
So cool.
Yeah, and so the interesting thing is what they were eating 850 years ago is still what grows out in the park today. So you have all of that, all of those flowers and different types of sages and stuff that were here after the lake drained away that grew over time. So it's not exactly like the plains, but they were eating a lot of things that currently still grow here today, which is really very cool.
Absolutely.
So you know a little bit about paleontology.
Paleontology, right? So we're talking about bones and bones being preserved in this really awesome environment, this really dynamic environment, but these aren't technically fossils. And so these are historical artifacts, they're biological artifacts, which tell us a lot about the biology of these organisms, but they're not technically fossils. To be a fossil, the technical definition of a fossil is that an organism had to have died about 10,000 years ago. And so
Just a few years before this.
a few years, just a few years, right? But one of the interesting things about all the sediments that Ranger Don just told us about is that they do preserve fossils. And so we do have fossils that go back millions of years here in this part of Lincoln County in southeastern Nevada. So from sediments that are found here in Cathedral Gorge State Park and surrounding areas, they've identified 2 new species of rodents that have come out of here. The oldest known sheep in North America actually came from just about a mile away from here.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, we've found llamas, camels, pieces of tusk from mastodons.
Camels. Camels is one thing people do not think about in Nevada. They don't think that camels ever roamed here, but we have the camel races up north.
That's true, Virginia City, right?
But it is very interesting because when you think of a camel, where do you think they come from?
Right, Asia or Africa, but
Mhm.
yeah, their entire evolutionary history is from here in North America, and Nevada has a great record of, like I said, llamas, like llamas you think of South America,
Right.
but they were stomping around Lincoln County, Nevada just a couple million years ago.
That's amazing.
And then this is not from the same formation, but this is tusk from a Gomtathere. So these are about 12 million years old.
Oh, only 12 million. Gee, they're young.
But these same types of elephant-like animals were stomping around here also. So we
Wow.
found pieces of them also.
Right here in Lincoln County.
Lincoln County.
Wow. It's amazing.
So some other bits and pieces of critters. We find lots of horse fossils
Oh.
in this area. So
Yep.
this is the hips or the head of a thigh bone to a horse.
And how old would this be? Did you say?
This one's also about 12 million years
12
old.
million.
But same types of horses were running around about 5 million years ago here.
Wow. Yeah, you can definitely tell it's a bone as opposed to a rock because of all the fine little, where the capillaries would be, is that, or the.
Yeah, just the
it's
pore
the
space.
pore space in there, yeah.
And so what geologists who studied the sediments in this area think this area would have looked like Don said in the video, it would have been kind of a lake. And on the margins of that lake, maybe there would have been streams entering them, but there's also sand dunes. So there's deposits of sand
Absolutely.
dunes. So this was kind of a really interesting, diverse environment that these animals were interacting with. So Lincoln County is that, when people think of Nevada, they think of places like Las Vegas that are really arid.
Right.
You know, if you're outside of Las Vegas, maybe there's a jackrabbit if you're lucky. Or something like that.
A lizard here and there.
Right. Lincoln County today is actually, we're higher in elevation. There's more precipitation here than Las Vegas. So we get quite a bit.
Because
different
we're
animals.
actually right at the edge of the Great Basin.
Right.
So, and the Great Basin is a desert, is a high desert. So we're right here, we're at about 5,000 feet. Whereas Vegas, you can go all the way down to what, 1,100 or
Right.
something.
Down the
So,
river.
and you're actually down in the Mojave Desert.
Right.
So, which starts just a little bit about an hour south of where we are currently.
Right. So just, it's a 3-hour drive from Las Vegas to get to here, to Cathedral Gorge. And you'll go through several different biomes. So our biomes are different types of ecological communities, different types of plants, different types of animals. And then when you get up here, yeah, you're smack dab in the Great Basin. So it actually looks more like, if you're from Nevada, it's more similar to places like Elko or Gardnerville than it is to Las Vegas.
Yeah, Las Vegas is kind of a little bit, everybody thinks of Las Vegas, like you said earlier, but really that doesn't represent most of the state. You know, like we are in the Great Basin and the Great Basin is very mountainous, right? We're like we are the most mountainous state in the Union.
Right.
So, or at least in the lower 48 anyway, but so we have the most mountain ranges here in Nevada, and people would not think of that because they think of a big open desert.
Right, exactly.
What about some of the artifacts?
Yeah, some artifacts, like some of the
So-
human history.
Yeah, so if you come into more modern history, then this whole area was originally settled actually by Mormon settlers who came here, who came out west, and they were in Utah, obviously, but this whole area was called Deseret back in the 1850s. And they came here. Panaca is the oldest town in eastern Nevada, which is where we are. It was settled in 1864. So it actually became a town before Nevada became a state,
Oh, cool.
because it became a town in May of 1864, and we didn't become a state until October 31 of 1864, which is an interesting story in itself. But so as those people came here, then they brought more and more artifacts with them. And so,
I think I'm gonna come down there. I'll come down there so everyone can see them.
So one of the things I talked about different things that he wrote out of the hillside, including all the bones and different things that we see. But also, when I talked about the garbage that arose out of the hillside, you'll see lots of tin cans and coffee pots and different things that the settlers were using in those days, because back in the 1860s and into the 1880s, when silver was found in this region up in Pioche, they would bring the silver ore actually down here to what was then called Bouillonville. And they would separate the ore down here. So they'd get the rock away from the actual silver and stuff. So this whole area where the visitor center is now and across what is the highway would have been Bouillonville. And so the people who worked in Bouillonville lived around here, but they didn't have any use for the gorge itself, because now we use it as, you know, our playground, so to speak. You know, it's nature's playground. But back then they were working and stuff, and they couldn't pull silver out of here. They couldn't pull gold out of here. There was, because it's a desert, they couldn't grow cattle here. They couldn't grow their crops here. They couldn't do any of that stuff. So it had no use. So actually they used it as a garbage dump. And they would just throw their garbage over the hillside. Well, it's not garbage to us anymore now, right? It's artifacts.
Right.
So we can learn the different things that they were doing, the different things they were eating, their different habits, and all those types of things based on what they were throwing away.
So in the US, any object that's over 50 years old is technically an artifact. So even though it was these people's garbage, if you see a rusty can like that in the landscape, you can't pick it up. So you have to leave it in place, right?
That's right. And when I talked about how you can't take things out of the state park, that goes back to just exactly this kind of thing. This is also something that you can't remove from the state park. Unfortunately, people think they're doing us a favor by cleaning up the state parks, and that happens a lot. And they'll see a rusty can and they'll think, oh, it's just garbage, I'm gonna go throw it away. And that happened with one of these just last week. One of these was added to the collection because somebody brought it in from the hillside and was gonna toss it. And I said, oh, no, you can't do that. But it happens all the time, and people don't really know the difference. So if you see a rusty can, just assume it's old.
Right. Yeah, just don't pick it up.
Don't pick it up, just leave it where it is and assume it's old.
All right, with that, Ralph, do you want to go to some questions, and we'll talk a little bit more about Ranger Dawn and how she became a interpretive ranger, and any questions for Dr. Bondi too?
Absolutely. We actually have quite a few questions that have been sent to me, and everyone who's in here, go ahead and put your questions in the chat and we'll call on you if we have time. Our first question comes from Mev, and she's in Italy, and this question is for Ranger Dawn. Mev, you should be able to ask.
Hello, nice to meet you, Ranger Dawn.
Hi,
In many years of working as a tour guide, have you come up with a way to convey the love for nature to people, especially for the paradise you worked?
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I know a lot of people who come here, and thank you for your question. A lot of people who come here love it, and we're kind of the best kept secret in Nevada, actually. Now we're kind of getting out to the world, but people really don't know we exist. And so when they come here, they are so absolutely amazed at the formations and the different things that we have to offer. We're kind of unique in this area because we actually have 5 state parks within a 50-mile radius, and they're all different. Not one is the same as another. And so I hope that, yes, as an interpreter and as someone who loves nature myself, and the reason that I did get into this job, I certainly hope that I do a good job of conveying that. And I think that people are definitely happy when they come here and they can appreciate nature, yes.
Very good. And we have an interesting scenario for a question here. I don't think I've ever had this, but we have a question that comes from the Valley of Fire State Park. And I'm gonna go ahead and unmute Kayla. She had a couple of questions for you. Go ahead, Kayla.
Hi. I don't think they're that strange of questions, but so one, does the park have trouble with guests damaging the landscape because the stone is so soft? And 2, if somebody wanted to visit, how much time or how many days would you recommend?
Good questions, Kayla. You know, the interesting thing about us is that we are 3 hours north of Vegas. So unlike you, who's 45 minutes to an hour outside of Las Vegas, we draw actually a little bit of a different crowd, even though we have a lot of people who come from Valley of Fire to here or vice versa. Because of course we all, and Kayla is my counterpart down at Valley of Fire. We share our parks, right? We want people to go, and that goes back to next question about nature. Yes, we like people to go to the other parks. And so we have a lot of crossover. But what we don't get up here, luckily, is a lot of vandalism. We don't really have that issue. Now, there are people who will go and they will carve their name in the soft stone. And that does happen. And actually, there is a secret place in the park where people did that back in the 1800s. But it's preserved because it's in a cave. So people can't get to it. And also, it can't get eroded away. Because what happens is people will carve their name, but eventually, usually one winter, it's gone. Because with the rain and the snow and everything, it just erodes away. What was your second question, Kayla? How long does it take?
Her
Or how
second
long
question,
should people plan for?
yeah, how long should they plan for staying there?
So right now we're in our busy season. So our busy seasons are spring and fall. We're a little bit less busy in the summer because it's a little bit warmer. People think it's hot like Vegas, but it's not. I mean, we're like in the mid 90s. Vegas is 110.
Right.
So we're a little bit cooler, and it cools down into the 60s at night. Whatever that is in Celsius. I should have done the calculation. So right now, the earlier you get here, the better if you're going to camp. So basically, if you're going to show up today, because none of our parks right now take reservations, you have to get here between 9 and 11. If you're just coming for a day visit, it doesn't matter what time of day you come. It's always beautiful. Our park is open even at night, so you can do night photography. In the summertime, you don't have to worry so much, but in the spring and fall, if you're going to find a camp spot, you got to get here early. Did I answer everything, Kayla?
That was spot on. So we have a question from Alyssa, and she is a 4th grade teacher, I believe, here in Nevada. And Alyssa, you should be able to unmute and ask. She had a question from one of her students. So go ahead.
Hi there. I do have a couple of questions. My students were asking about animals in the park. And then the weather in general. I know you hit a little bit on the temperature, but they were asking, do you get snow and rain and that kind of thing?
Yes, we most definitely do. Now, as you know, being in Vegas, and for the other people out there, we didn't get much rain or snow or anything this year. I mean, it was dry.
Right.
And Josh, as you said earlier, we usually get, what do you get, like 4 inches down there a year or something on a good year? And we average 7 to 10 inches up here, usually on a good year. Maybe we got an inch this year, I think. I don't know. It's been terrible. I mean, we had 260 days of like dry nothing.
Right.
And even when they said it was going to rain, it didn't. But we normally do get rain, and usually that rain comes in our monsoonal months, which used to be July and August. It's kind of moved into August and September now, if we get it. And then we have had huge floods. Actually, in 2018, we had a huge flood through our campground, wiped out our campground in July of that year. And so we have since rebuilt it, and it's really nice now. It was nice before, really nice now. In between, though, it was a great example of how this was actually formed. Because when the flood came, it brought all kinds of depositional material with it. And so it deposited that silt anywhere from about 2 inches to 5 feet deep, depending on where it was. We had 5-6 feet of water in the park. So yes, we get rain. Yes, we get snow. Snow is how all of those formations really form, because you get that freeze thaw process. Excuse me. And so as it freezes, it actually creates all those gaps.
Right. Yeah, so with the freeze, the ice expands and it creates cracks in the rocks. And so as those cracks open up, and the ice thaws out, the water's able to get down into those cracks, and then it creates weaknesses in the rock.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why you can see different, as I said in the video, it could be a different landscape every time
Right.
because of that freeze-thaw process and pieces of it falling off and breaking off. But then we usually have sun 300 and some odd days a year,
Right.
so.
Or like today, wind and allergies, right?
Yes, well, we always have the wind. And if you guys can see out, the whole reason we're inside today is because the winds are about 22 miles an hour. And so it kicks up a little bit of your allergies between that and everything blooming because it's spring. But if you guys could see outside, you would actually be able to see the dust blowing in the air. And it is so fine, it gets into everything. Even if you don't leave your windows open, it still gets in your house.
Nevada wind storms are like Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. It's it's like something else.
True.
So we have a question from Tony here in Nevada, and it's the same question that I got from a student in France. So I'm gonna just go ahead and read it. They want to know, what did bison eat when you examined their stomachs? Like what specific stuff? You might have already covered it, but they would like to know.
Well, I did touch on it a little bit, but I didn't specifically say. So yeah, it's a good question. So what we currently have growing now are different types of sages and also different types of flowers like daisies and different, even the sagebrush actually has flowers on it. And so they would eat that, different kinds of browse. We have Artemisia, which is actually our state flower. It's called big sage, and they definitely like that, but they liked the daisies the best. Daisies were a big thing that they were eating and would still eat today. And I'm sure the ones up in running around in Wyoming eat those all the time.
Yeah, it turns out bison have a really flexible diet. So if you have a herd of cow-like animals, if there's something on the landscape that's edible, they're going to find it.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, it's very true.
We'll go with a couple more student questions, and I'm gonna let you go. But there's a student here that wants to know: is it hard to hike there? Like for, say, if you're a third or fourth grader, do you guys have young hikers there, or is it very difficult to hike?
Yeah, no, that is a great question. No, you guys, it's the perfect age. I mean, anybody, you can be a kid of any age, including 30, 40, 50 years old, and be here and enjoy it. A lot of our trails, we have about 10 miles worth of trail in the park. And a lot of those trails I consider actually walking trails as opposed to hiking trails. So it takes you through the formations. It takes you around through all the slot canyons. So you really are in the gorge and you can see the park really well. And then we have some really nice trails that go up on some ridges where you can see down into the park. So, and they're all really accessible, pretty easy. Not ADA accessible, not handicap accessible, but if you're hiking or running around, yes, definitely you can do it if you're a third grader.
That's pretty interesting stuff there. We have another question from Alyssa, who's a fourth grade teacher here in Nevada, and she has her student question. So go ahead and ask.
Hi again. So the students were asking, what type of animals do you have in the park now?
So we have everything from reptiles, lizards, snakes, to jackrabbits and cottontails. And one of the really cool animals, I think, is the kit fox. Kit fox are a little bit bigger than a house cat, and they love to live in the formations, because the thing about kit fox is not only are they foxy, but they need to hide from their biggest predator, which is the coyote, which of course we have here too. And the formations really give them the opportunity to be able to do that because of all those crevices and all those ins and outs and little caverns and things that we have in them. They can go into those. They're small enough to get into places where coyotes can't get. And so they offer a lot of places where kit fox can get out of or into. So you don't just have one entrance and one exit. You have many options, and they can just hide in those all day long. So every once in a while you go out there and you'll hear some interesting noises, probably either a kit fox or a bird.
Yeah, I was gonna say, me and Josh like to bring our bird book here because we
Yeah,
get lots of
cute,
birds,
lots of birds.
woodpeckers, yeah, hawks.
We have all kinds of birds, whether they're raptors or little sparrows or anything like that. There's just tons of birds flying around. And I had a couple here a number of years ago from Germany. So hi to everybody out there in Germany. But they came in and they were like, there's something out there in the formations. And they were really worried about what it was because it sounded like it was a monster. I mean, and with things echoing around out there, you can get some pretty interesting sounds. And so I told him, I said, oh, it was probably a pigeon. And they were like not really buying it. So I went out there with them and sure enough, it was a pigeon, but the way that sound was bouncing off the walls, I mean, I quite literally could go out there and record sounds for Hollywood for horror store shows, you know, here, use this because nobody will know the difference because they can sound pretty scary.
So there's scary noises there. Any other selling points?
It's absolutely beautiful.
It's beautiful.
It really is, and it's fun.
Yeah.
So on that note, we had a couple of questions that had to do with, and this is for both Josh and Ranger Dawn. Can each of you guys tell us what is your favorite thing about your profession?
Go ahead.
You want me to go first?
Sure.
My favorite thing is being able to do this and to interact with all the people who come here and really want to enjoy the park. I really get a kick out of people wanting to be here and, as Mev said earlier, sharing the nature with them and things that go on and the beauty of our area, because so many people do not understand the beauty of Nevada, especially. They just really don't. I had a woman tell me one time, oh, you know, Nevada used to be the place that I drove through to get to California. And she stopped one day and that was it. She's like, I'm not doing that anymore. I want to stay here and see some things. So that's my favorite thing.
And that's a great answer. I don't know if I could follow that up, but what I enjoy most about my profession, being a paleontologist and a geologist, is just I've always had a lifelong passion for being outdoors and for learning. And so it's just trying to tease apart this story of a place through time. And so how these mountains get here, where did these particular animals come from? How is Nevada, how has the Great Basin changed through geologic time? And who's lived in Nevada through time? So that's what I really enjoy doing. And of course I enjoy, once I figure that out or try to figure that out, also conveying it to the public.
Any other questions?
Those are phenomenal answers, and we're gonna go ahead and let you guys go in a second. But before we let you go, Ranger Dawn, if they wanted to learn more about Nevada State Parks, where could they go?
To Nevada State Parks website, and it's really easy. It's just parks, PARKS, .nv4nevada.gov.
And the same question for you, Dr. Bondi. If the students want to learn more about the Nevada Science Center, where can they go to learn about that?
They can check out our website, which is sciencecenternevada.org, or they can check us out on any of the social media platforms that we maintain as well.
Well, you guys are wonderful, and thank you, Becky. Thank you, Josh.
Thank
you, Dawn. We hope that you guys have a safe trip back. Don't travel too far in those desert storms and scary, terrifying sounds.
Maybe we'll just stay. It's too nice
There you
here.
go. The campgrounds look beautiful. I was like, well, how have I not noticed this? I've lived here for like 20
secret,
years.
and they have hot showers in the morning.
See?
There you go.
Yeah, we have all the amenities.
Civilization. It's like a 5-star hotel out in the desert. Well, thank you guys. We appreciate it, and we hope everyone is healthy, happy, and safe. And we'll have this recording out on social media as well as on our YouTube channels. We appreciate everyone participating today and hope to hear back from everyone. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.